This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
It was so nice to have a really nice hot shower.
We're building them tiny homes.
We are in the window of maximum danger.
Get rid of the illegals!
The only person who doesn't know it's over is Casey and his lawyers.
My first thought that came to my mind was that I have to help her and that I can't leave her.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Good afternoon and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Family Life News anchor Sarah Harnish. Snow is on the way Thursday night, but it won't be anything like what we saw 10 years ago this week, the anniversary of Snowvember in western New York. Meteorologist Andy Parker.
It developed into what a lot of people called the wall. You could literally see the wall of the lake effect as it came in off the lake. We saw snow totals run between 4 and 6 feet.
Thursday's storm for us, not expected to be a big deal unless you live above 1,500 feet. Kevin has all the details coming up in a few minutes. For the first time in nearly 2 months, the people of Asheville, North Carolina can take a shower after Hurricane Helene took out the water pipes.
Honestly, I got in there and definitely started crying because it was so nice to have a really nice hot shower.
It's been 52 days since the water was on in Asheville. Today, the pipes going into the city were reconstructed, tested, and turned back on. 126,000 homes were also destroyed in western North Carolina with that storm. A cluster of churches has been adopting one home at a time to rebuild. Jeremy Fine is a worship leader with Generations Church in nearby Swannanoa, North Carolina. He says when he delivers heaters and food, he does it by dancing and worshiping.
We're building them tiny homes. They're beyond grateful for that. Just so they have that roof over their head. They're not living in a tent anymore. I couldn't tell you how many people have rolled down their window and said, this is the first smile I've had on my face in weeks. Or they start dancing in their car with me and they're like, I haven't danced in years. Or like people have jumped out of their car and danced with me. And it's just like, it is joy.
Fine says it's easy to deliver the hope of Christ, but doing it with joy in an area of this level of devastation changes lives because it communicates the message that God has not left the people of North Carolina.
I'm going to have to turn it back to Jesus, right? Like he is our place of hope and he is our place of peace. When things are really in a dire position or things don't seem to be going according to plan, I always want to look at my perspective and really what the truth is, because your perspective is the filter for your reality. And you could look at one situation and only see the bad, or you could choose to see the good, and that helps you get through it.
That is the physical aid. Now to financial aid. President Biden asked Congress for $100 billion in emergency disaster relief this afternoon, part of it for the victims of Helene and Milton.
President Biden's Office of Management and Budget says recovery from hurricanes Helene and Milton, fires in Maui, tornadoes across the Midwest, the bridge collapse in Baltimore, and severe storms in at least 7 states has depleted emergency resources. Biden sent the $98 billion request to House Speaker Mike Johnson, who said it will get immediate attention.
We'll go to work, of course, evaluating that, and we're going to make sure we deliver for the hurricane victims.
It is hard to believe that Thanksgiving is next week, but it is, and 80 million of us will be traveling by plane, train, or automobile. What day will be busiest?
AAA found an increase in the number of people leaving on Tuesday and coming back Monday. So they expect Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving to be very busy on the roads, as well as Sunday and Monday after Thanksgiving.
When you drive into Manhattan, it's going to cost you $9 more starting January 5th. New York City's Metropolitan Transit Authority just approved a toll, making the Big Apple the first U.S. city in the country to adopt congestion pricing.
Motion carries. We've adopted the resolution.
The MTA says it wants to discourage people from driving into New York City. Overseas, the U.S. did a 180 on its policy with Ukraine today. The country can now use American-made weapons against Russia after Moscow launched one of the largest attacks on Ukrainian civilians.
Ukrainian forces will be able to retaliate harder and further like never before. The Army Tactical Missile System has a range of up to 190 miles.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia John Sullivan was on CBS Mornings today.
It was about time that the United States gave the Ukrainians the ability to defend themselves more completely.
Now to China, where President Xi Jinping has ordered his army to be ready to seize control of Taiwan by 2027.
We are in the window of maximum danger. Our Navy is getting smaller at the same time that China has built the biggest Navy in the world. And so we have to operate under the assumption that Xi Jinping is serious.
Former Congressman Mike Gallagher says our Defense Department has 2 years to prevent World War III.
We need to be moving heaven and earth. Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense needs to move heaven and earth to put hard power in Xi Jinping's path before it's too late. And understand that it's not just an over there threat, it's a right here at home threat.
Gallagher says China is by far our biggest threat, bigger than Russia and bigger than Iran. Testimony resumed today with the man accused of killing Georgia college student Laken Riley. He's an illegal immigrant from Venezuela.
This trial is proceeding as expected. It's going quite quickly. We're hearing the prosecution's case here. It's pretty airtight, I've got to say. We've heard them lay the foundation as to how, the really horrifying details about how they found her.
The man got into the U.S. illegally 2 years ago. It got out of hand in Chicago last night after a city council meeting was stormed. People there angry that America's third largest town is a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. That meeting sounded like this.
You're going to protect the undocumented while you're going to allow for the citizens in Chicago to suffer.
Get rid of the illegals.
Illinois is purple. We're going to turn red.
Chicago's mayor defiant.
This is a city that will remain a welcoming city. We're going to protect undocumented individuals.
51,000 illegal immigrants have landed in the Windy City since President Biden began allowing 2,500 migrants to cross the border daily. And don't eat the carrots. Correspondent Matt Piper.
California-based Grimway Farms is recalling its organic carrots due to a possible E. coli outbreak. The CDC says dozens were sickened in 18 states. One person has died and at least 15 other people have been hospitalized.
The carrots were sold at popular grocery stores across the country, including Walmart. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, a little more snow on the way, the shortage of plow drivers, and still counting ballots for Bob Casey's seat in Pennsylvania. Those stories after weather with Kevin Williams.
We'll have a mixture of patchy clouds and moonlight tonight. It'll be cooler than it was last night, the low in the 30s for most. On your Tuesday, some sunshine, but a little cloudier in western Pennsylvania where it could shower once or twice, high in the 50s. A big shift in the jet stream pattern will deliver chilly air, damp air, and the result, gray skies and rain later in the week, and for some, those higher elevations, snow.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Kevin says snow is on the way this week, and PennDOT is still looking for snowplow drivers.
Because it's imperative that we have drivers to keep our trucks on the road for 24 hours in the event that we do have a winter event.
PennDOT's Vince Greenland tells WJAC they're short-staffed, but they can still do their job just with longer routes. If you're interested in applying to be a snowplow driver in PA, you can visit the PennDOT website for details. They're still counting the ballots in Pennsylvania for Bob Casey's Senate seat. Republican Dave McCormick is 25,000 votes ahead of Casey, but Casey is refusing to concede. Democratic strategist Brittany Crampsey.
We have the automatic recount for a reason. Bob Casey is not going to lead a January 6th insurrection. He is just waiting for all of the votes to be counted, and we have to let this process play out.
Republican consultant Christopher Nicholas says there's no way Casey can make up the difference in the vote tally, recount or not.
Recounts changed tens of votes, not tens of thousands of votes. The only person who doesn't know what's over is Casey and his lawyers.
That recount has to be completed by next Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. New York's clean slate law took effect over the weekend. It makes the Empire State one of 12 states with a clean slate law that allows criminals to have their records sealed if they've stayed out of trouble. 3 years for a clean slate for misdemeanors and 8 years for felonies. There are some exceptions.
If someone is convicted of a sexual
sex offense or a Class A felony, such as murder, those won't be sealed. And there's also certain instances where if someone is applying for a gun or if they have to get background checked by certain employers who deal with children or the elderly, they may still have their records pulled.
Republican Assemblyman Steve Hawley calls Clean Slate a free pass for criminals. Governor Hochul praised the law, saying it'll help ex-cons who stay out of trouble find jobs in housing and education. And a network of local rural churches are connecting and inspiring each other through the Center for Rural Ministry at Grove City College. Our own Greg Gillespie sat down with the center's director, Reverend Charlie Cotherman. Let's listen in.
As a Christian liberal arts college in a rural area, we have resources that a lot of the area doesn't have, whether it's faculty or, just connectional power with churches and the ability to convene and bring people together. We found that we could connect students to smaller churches and small places. And this was a beautiful thing where the students would catch a vision for what the kingdom work God was doing in small places and small churches. And the churches would be encouraged by the kind of youthful exuberance of the students. So one of the things that gives me hope is kind of seeing students come back from places like there's a Methodist church in Kane that the students have just really enjoyed working with that pastor, or another one down in Fombell, which is just a little south of Grove City, where they go and they see these churches involved in their community doing like hands-on work. They see leaders who are very much full speed ahead because they believe that God's doing great things. And the students come back and say, wow, this isn't what we actually expected. We expected to just kind of go in and paint some walls and, hear some kind of stories about how things used to be good.
As far as what you're discovering in the churches you work with through the Rural Ministry Center, what's the untold story there?
Loneliness. I think loneliness is something that obviously the entire country is dealing with now, that clergy deal with in a special way because of what they have to carry. And then if you are far from other members of the clergy or in other members of your denomination, for instance, the closest pastor in the denomination I serve in is over 2 hours away from where I live in rural northwestern PA. Loneliness is something that you have to be intentional about working against because it will creep in. And so that's one of the reasons why we are doing things with pastor affinity groups, where we're connecting pastors from, southwestern New York, western PA, eastern Ohio, northern West Virginia into these kind of regional affinity groups where they can connect every month or every other month with folks who are doing some of the same things and, share stories and learn from each other, because loneliness is a thing that is very real in the rural church.
Charlie Cotherman is executive director of ruralministry.org. You can listen to our Family Life news features and newscasts when you're away from your radio. Just go to familylife.org or get the Family Life Now mobile app. It's time next for tonight's market report, brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Wall Street is closing mixed to start the week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 55 points to 43,389. The S&P 500 rose 23 points to 58.93, and the Nasdaq gained 111 points to 18,791. Faithward Advisors is a Christian financial planning firm online at faithwardadvisors.com.
If Jeopardy had a category, things people procrastinate about, making out a will would top the list. Hi, I'm Rob West with your Faith and Finance Minute. Imagine a court freezing your assets, then combing through every detail of your finances for months or longer. Well, that's exactly what happens if you die without a will. Fortunately, it's easy to spare your loved ones that burden. A will is essential if you want to avoid having your family go through the hardship of the probate court deciding how your assets will be distributed. The good news is, drafting a will is relatively inexpensive. If you don't have a will yet, get with an estate attorney today to draw one up. You can find one that shares your Christian values by clicking Find a CKA at faithfi.com. Get biblical answers to your financial questions in the FaithFi community. Download FaithFi, Faith and Finance in your app store or visit faithfi.com.
Coming up on the 5 o'clock report, the girl that gave up the win her senior year in cross country to help out the opposing team. A story of kindness next at 5.
We'll have a mixture of patchy clouds and moonlight tonight. It'll be cooler than it was last night. The low in the 30s for most. On your Tuesday, some sunshine, but a little cloudier in western Pennsylvania where it could shower once or twice, high in the 50s. A big shift in the jet stream pattern will deliver chilly air, damp air, and the result, Gray skies and rain later in the week, and for some, those higher elevations, snow.
All right, Kevin, finally at 5, an 18-year-old cross-country star in Arkansas has been given the platform to share her faith nationwide after an act of kindness at the state championship last week. It was Batesville High School Kaylee Montgomery's final race as a senior, and she was logging her best time as she neared the finish line. But that's when she noticed her competitor, Juliet, doubled over in the final stretch.
She was on the ground. I just saw her, and my first instinct and just my first thought that came to my mind was that I have to help her and that I can't leave her.
Instead of picking up her pace, Montgomery picked up the teenager. She told the press it's what Christ would have done for her.
If I was down and fallen, Jesus wouldn't pass me by. And so that was kind of what was going through my head.
In a powerful moment, Montgomery ran for the finish line with Juliet under her arm. But it wasn't what she did that won her over. It was what she said.
She started praying over me, and it really did give me strength to finish and just try to get up and see the finish line getting closer. And she would say, we're almost there, which was really encouraging.
A pause, a prayer, and a platform spreading the kindness of Christ in Arkansas. And that's the world that we live in for Monday, the 18th of November. I'm Sarah Harnish, and this is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.